And what a title. Speeches That Change the World is Ann's topic for today. So please help me welcome Ann Adams.
77 years ago, and ain't I a woman? These phrases, still to this day, evoke strong feelings, despite the many times that we've heard them, because they're tied into memories of important times and people who cared enough to get up and speak and try and change the world. And the reason they were able to do that and inspire people and encourage and motivate them is because they were able to discern what were those key issues of the time and bring those in a way that helped make people believe and care and act. And to me, that is the power of rhetoric. One of the most powerful examples of that kind of rhetoric being used to affect change is Sojourner Truth's speech, Ain't I a Woman?, that was spoken at the Women's Convention in 1851. Now, Truth was a freed slave, and the suffragist movement was predominantly a white movement at the time. So her experience as a black woman brought a new perspective and called into question some key assumptions of that time. She says, "That man over there says that women need to be helped into carriages and lifted over ditches and to have the best place everywhere. Nobody helps me into carriages over mud puddles or gives me any best place. And ain't I a woman? Look at me. Look at my arm. I plowed and planted and gathered into barns and no man could head me. And ain't I a woman? I could work as much and eat as much as a man when I could get it and bear the lash as well. And ain't I a woman? I've borne 13 children and seen most of them sold into slavery. And when I cried out with a mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me. And ain't I a woman?" I would say that is a powerful example of a rhetorical question, and it certainly made people question the assumptions of that time. Then we have another example that I think is very powerful, and that is Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, 1863. Now at this time, we're midway through the Civil War. People are feeling a little less excited about the concept. There's a lot of suffering, a lot of loss, and there are folks wondering, is this something we need to continue with? So Lincoln is taking this opportunity to consecrate the battlefield at Gettysburg as a way of rallying the troops. And he does that by tying this war back into the reason for the founding of the nation and the Constitution and tying that connection in for people. And so he references that at the very beginning of his speech with the famous phrase, 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who gave their lives that that nation might live. It is for us the living to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they fought here, thus so far nobly advanced. It is for us to be dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause, for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that those dead shall not have died in vain, and that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. And so with that parallelism, that rhetorical device at the end, and the elevated language throughout the speech, he shows the importance of this mission, of this principle, of this duty to the American people to go forth and continue this battle despite the great suffering that had occurred at that point. And my last example of strong speeches that have changed the world is from 1963. Martin Luther King Jr., the master of metaphor and repetition, now references the Gettysburg Address in his speech to make the point that the work of the Emancipation Proclamation was not finished, and that America has a duty and an obligation for the task ahead of securing all of its citizens their civil rights. And so he references or uses the same wording of the Gettysburg Address to begin his speech. 50 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to the end of the long night of captivity. In a sense, we have come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American would fall heir. This note was a promise that all men would be guaranteed the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I say to you today, my friends, that in spite of the difficulties and frustrations of the moment, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that my 4 children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. So speeches touch our lives because they touch our hearts. With carefully crafted words and impassioned delivery, we can inspire, motivate, and encourage. We don't have to be a Lincoln, a King, or a Truth. We have only to speak from our own experience, to share our lives, and be willing to reach out to others and engage. Whether it's our first icebreaker or our 10th manual speech or an address to a world audience, speeches that change the world begin with the willingness to get up and speak.